You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to the Options Playbook, the program where we break down cutting-edge option strategies and explain how you can incorporate them into your own portfolio. Whether you're looking to grow your capital with some offensive maneuvers or protect your investments with defensive plays, you can find them all in the Options Playbook. The Options Playbook is brought to you by Ally Invest. Anything mentioned today is for educational purposes and is not a recommendation or advice. Options involve risk. Please refer to ally.com/invest/disclosures to review additional risks involved with trading options. Securities offered through Ally Invest Securities LLC, member FINRA and SIPC. Now, let's open the playbook and get started.
All right, everybody, that music can mean only one thing. It is a rare treat, a rare live holiday special edition of Options Playbook Radio, the program for you out there, the busy, maybe you're just dipping your toes into the options waters, but you're a busy and active retail stock trader. Maybe you've started down those waters. We know a lot of you have in 2020. A lot of newcomers to the world of options this year, but maybe you're finding those waters a little bit rough. Maybe you want to improve your chances of profitability. Either way, we got you covered here on Options Playbook Radio. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from this very fine network upon which OPR and so many other shows come at you day after day here, reminding you, if you like what you hear, OPR, any other show we do here on the network, keep those reviews coming. It certainly does help. All those new folks we talked about, they're looking for a place to go these days to find out more about those crazy options things. So point them in our direction. Keep those reviews coming. Wherever you listen to this, it really does help new folks discover the content that I mentioned. It is a rare holiday special. We are recording this on December 23rd, Festivus Day. Happy Festivus. Get out there and air your grievances, get your medal poll, prepare for your feats of strength, all the other fun stuff that happens during Festivus. But it also means I am pleased to introduce the actual host of this show, Mr. Brian Overby, a.k.a. the Options Guy, a.k.a. the Senior Options Analyst over there at Ally Invest. Brian, A, welcome back to your own show, and B, happy Festivus, sir.
Thank you so much, Mark. Yeah, it's great. I'm actually traveling, and I love the fact that you've taken the time to do a huddle up with me to answer some of these listener questions overall. So I'm getting excited about 2021, and what a great way to bring in 2021 by answering some listener questions. So I think it's time to huddle up.
It's time to huddle up and answer questions about your favorite options plays. Submit your questions via twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the huddle, the portion of the show where Brian and I huddle up to answer your questions. So again, while you're airing your grievances, preparing for a bit of a feat of strength, let's see if we can answer some of your options questions. This first one's a fun one, Brian. It kind of actually harkens back to the episode you just did of Options Playbook Radio, the name pretty much everyone has on their brain these days. Of course, I'm talking about Tesla. Tesla just added to the S&P 500, so it's been a huge mover up somewhere north of 700%, I think, just this year alone. So it's been, I think the technical term is an insane year for Tesla by just about any measure. In fact, our buddy Henry, who was on the election night special with you a few weeks ago here, a few months ago now, it seems like a few weeks ago, Mr. Schwartz tweeting out recently from Trade Alert, Tesla is so popular now from an options perspective, it makes up 17% of the OI out there. So it's dwarfing, your Amazons, your Spies, your app, add them all together. They don't equal Tesla. So that just shows you what rarefied status Tesla is in these days from an options perspective. But that said, Brian, we thought we would turn the spotlight back on our audience. We asked them a little pop quiz. I'd be curious to get your thoughts on what you think the answer is to this one. We said, hey, Tesla dominating the options market these days. Like I said, 17% of open interest. But even though everyone's talking upside, everyone's talking calls, puts still dominate the top 10 by a sizable margin. In fact, you got to go all the way out to number 12, Brian, in the sizable positions of Tesla to find the first open call on that list. So, Brian, we put it to our audience. I will put it to you as well. Which of these do you think it is? Is it the June 500s, the Dees 700s, which obviously just went off the board last week? We have the Jan 80s, 80, Brian, not 800, or the March 650s. And our audience, I'll give you a little helping hand. Our audience chose the Dees 700s with about 49%, following by about 26% for the March 650s, about 15.5% for the June 500s, and only about 9.5% for the Jan 80s. So that's how our audience broke down, Brian. Do you concur with the folks out there, or do you have your own analysis?
Wow. Usually I understand the December call just because we're looking at the near-term options usually has the most open interest in it. But I'm going to go out to the March 650 calls. I'm going to join in that bandwagon and see where we're at there. So final answer, March 21, 650 call options.
An interesting guess, certainly a rational guess, a reasonable guess, but Mr. Overby, when we're talking Tesla, rational and reasonable have nothing to do with the discussion, right? So it is actually the Jan 80s. Those are the largest open call position by a substantial margin. 50-odd thousand, I think, are open of the 8 zeros.
Wow.
So yeah, that's why we put it in that list, just because it's so absurd. And everyone went for the other ones. We kind of expected that. So yeah, that's yet another reason why Tesla just. And the number one open position in Tesla right now, Brian, is something in the order of 180,000 of the January 1.0 strike puts.
Wow.
So, just to show you the outlandish nonsense that is open in the land of Tesla. Jan 80s and Jan 1 puts.
Right. And the skew in the puts is just crazy. I see the vols have came in a little bit, but I remember looking at them when the stock was at 180. Actually, just a little tidbit on Tesla, and I actually snapped a screenshot of it because I found it was really interesting. When the stock was at 180, CNBC reported that Tesla put out a statement stating the risk of Elon Musk's position in that he might get a margin call. So he was extremely leveraged, and the stock was at 180, and they warned the viewers on CNBC that he may be forced to sell stock from a margin call.
How hilarious is that? The CEO of the company getting a margin call. That's what.
Right. I don't even know how he gets to leverage it, being an insider. Like, I was really confused, but I wouldn't even say it if I didn't have I took a snapshot of it with my iPhone just so that I actually had the quote. And it was a PR. It was put out by their PR firm saying that this is a potential risk. So I wonder if he's going to be selling some of it now, if he's that leveraged,
If he's a smart man. He said it was overvalued many, many months ago, right? So if he's a smart man, he's been dumping some for a while out here. All right, we could talk Tesla for the rest of the show, but you guys have your questions as well. Next up comes, I like this handle, the Eagle. The Eagle. The Eagle wants to know, all one word too, no space, the Eagle. The Eagle wants to know, if I believe XYZ, and he puts in parentheses, stock price $50. Okay, everyone's favorite, XYZ. I get where you're going so far. He says, will decline by 50% in the next 3 months. If I believe XYZ will decline by 50% in the next 3 months, then he puts a period. So interesting grammar here, but we'll leave that aside. If I buy a long put on this option with a position of 10,000, what would my return be if I am right? All right, there's a lot a lot going on here, a lot to maybe correct here. First off, the Eagle, it's kind of impossible with the scant detail you have given us to give you the exact answer. I mean, what you're saying, so you think XYZ is going to drop by 50%, so it's going to go to 25 in the next 3 months. So you could say, I want to buy the 3 month out 25 puts, and you could still be wrong on that trade, because if you hold it all the way through expiration and then stock closes right at 25, guess what? Those puts are going to go out worthless. So you could still lose all the money that you spent. So it all depends on what time frame you're looking at. If you buy a weekly 45 put, for example, and then the stock doesn't budge for the next week, you're going to lose money there. So it all depends on what time frame you're looking at, and then also how you take it off. If you buy those 25 puts I just mentioned 3 months out, and the stock plummets in the first month down to 38 or 32, let's say, let's just gets crushed, and those 25 puts are going to explode, you got to take them off. If you don't, if you sit there for a while and then you wait and the stock ends up going out at, let's say, 28 by the end of it, guess what? You miss on all that juice, and you think that was a huge profit is now a huge loser. So it all depends on what time frame you're looking at and also how you take it off. That's a key. You put a hedge on or any sort of speculative trade, you got to take it off within the right time frame. Brian, do you have anything to add here for Mr. The Eagle, who has a bit of an impossible question, sir?
Right. I think you summed it up well. And so I guess I would just add that you would err to the side of going out at least 3 months, maybe 4 months if you were looking at a put, and then you would probably buy something that is closer to where the stock is at right now. So you said stock XYZ stock at 50, maybe you would look at buying a 4 month 50 strike put and spending that $10,000 and buy as many puts as you could there. That might be the scenario, but yeah, a lot of holes in that question overall.
More detail is your friend. We don't want epic 5-page treatises, but give us some detail, what strikes you're looking at, how far out, and then we could give you an accurate analysis of how you could best put that 10,000 to work, because otherwise we're kind of just flying blind there. The Eagle, even though you have a cool handle. You get points for the handle. All right, next up, Jennifer Maya. Brian, I don't think this is the other hot topic everyone's got on their brain. If you've managed to get past Tesla these days, everyone's got crypto, in particular Bitcoin, on the brain. Of course, blowing through 20,000 up to 24,000 recently before giving up a lot of that. I'll have to see where it is right now. Wait 5 seconds, and it's moved another 500 handles. But Jennifer wants to know, Brian, has the rally past 20,000 changed Mr. Overby? Oh, she's very polite. Mr. Overby's outlook on Bitcoin, and also any plans to incorporate Bitcoin options at Ally Invest? Well, the second one's probably a little bit more challenging. I know the regulatory framework for all things crypto in the U.S. is still a little bit fluid, so maybe more to do with the second one for a while. I may have to table that for a little bit, but the first one is certainly interesting. But I don't think we have had a chance to talk Bitcoin with you at all. What are your thoughts here, as Jennifer wants to know, on just in general, this huge rally past 20,000, as she wants to know, has it changed your outlook?
Well, as far as Bitcoin is concerned, we don't offer it. And actually, Jennifer is made that point in that Ally Invest doesn't. We don't have the ability for our clients to trade Bitcoin. So with that said, I can't really make a comment as if I think it's going up or going down. And honestly, I really don't know. It's such a volatile underlying. I've never really studied it overall. Now, as far as are there plans to incorporate Bitcoin at Ally Invest, it's been brought up, and you think about it. Anytime you have something that is getting this much attention, this much volume, the fact that you're even asking the questions, obviously we consider it. But I don't have an answer as to yes or no. I can just say that we are talking about it overall.
Yeah, they're hitting all the hot topics today, Brian. Tesla, yep. Crypto, get all the ones I kind of expected come flooding in. Here's an interesting one. This comes from Every 7. He or she saying they liked your VIX backspread episode, Brian. Looking forward to more volatility analysis on OPR next year. This is kind of a little bit of a trend I've noticed as well, Brian. You started to dive into more VIX-related trades on your show, and you mentioned on some of your live engagements with the Ally clientele, they're asking more, sounds like, about VIX and volatility and related products these days. So as Every 7 wants to know, is this going to be a trend coming up for next year, sir? More VIX and volatility on OPR?
Well, if the VIX stays where it's at, it's definitely going to be a topic. And that's really the main reason why we talked about it. And actually, as far as the VIX is concerned, it's basically the only strategy that I really do in the VIX is a backspread overall. Something where if the market goes up, you're going to be okay. But if the market goes down, you have the best potential. And what we were talking about, the episode that every 7 is talking about. We looked at a VIX back spread with puts anticipating a downturn in volatility after the election. That's exactly what the preface was before we talked about the VIX back spread episode. So if the VIX stays where it's at, the VIX is a very interesting trading vehicle. As a matter of fact, I might think the VIX is actually less volatile than Tesla over the next year. Now, that would be a question, right? What stock will, what option, 30-day option contracts, the VIX of the VIX, will it be higher or lower than the 30-day VIX of Tesla at mid-year? I think that's a question. I think I came up with one, Mark. You might have to put that one out there.
I like that.
Which will have higher volatility, the VVIX or the actual 30-day implied volatility in Tesla at some period in time?
VVIX is floating around 120 or so right now. I'll have to go check where Tesla is. But you're right. That's certainly a neck and neck. I could easily see Tesla outperforming that in the near. That might be a good question. We'll have to incorporate that. All right, next, speaking of VIX, I got more VIX questions, Brian. They're coming in hot and heavy here. This comes from Anthony T. He wants to know, another day when VIX is up and SPX is up. What gives? I thought this wasn't possible. This came in recently. We've seen this a number of times recently, Anthony. So let me just disabuse you and everyone else listening of the notion. People have put it out there that some of this is just the success, I suppose, of SIBO marketing and people out there trumpeting the fear gauge that VIX is this 100% negatively inversely correlated index to the S&P. That is not true. It is probably somewhere around 75 to 80% most of the time out there. So obviously you're going to have days just within that framework that they're both going to be moving in the same direction, mostly a little bit up or a little bit down. And mostly you're going to see it on days when not much is going on, right? You're going to see maybe the S&P drifting up a little bit and maybe VIX drifting up, VIX drifting down, S&P drifting down a little bit. So those are days usually when you're going to see it. But remember, VIX is its own beast. It is derived from predominantly that at-the-money SPX options, but you also have the skew. So what's going on in the call wing, what's going on with the put wing, and some other various nuances. It gets a little wonky around expiration and settlement, for example. Look at all the lawsuits around VIX over the last couple of years. So there's a lot of other moving pieces that go on into VIX rather than just straight pulling out the at-the-money implied volatility of the SPX and turning that into a number. And also, last bit, I would just also remind you that movement at the end of the day is volatility. People always conflate in the equity realm, down is vol is up is vol is down. That's a very equity-centric mindset, and it's also not true. If the thing's moving, if it's moving size in upside or downside, that's going to equate to volatility. So bear that in mind when you're looking at all things VIX. Brian, another VIX-related question. You've tapped into the VIX spigot, sir. What do you have to say for Anthony T., who wants to know, what's up, VIX up and SPX up? How is that possible?
Well, you summed it up very well. So I will just say Anthony was probably doing this. It is also a news-related thing, just like in underlying stocks. So when I usually will see the SPX up, where I saw it recently was before the Fed meeting. So we had the market kind of going up, but the VIX was up just because of some speculation from the Fed. And those times you will sometimes see that VIX do that. But this year was unprecedented just in many different things. And there were just times for absolutely no reason at all that I saw the VIX going up and the S&P 500 index going up. So overall, but I think with the time you're probably referencing, Anthony, because I know it was a recent question that came out, was probably right around the Fed meeting.
Yeah, we've seen it quite a few times of late, and you're going to see it again. So just bear that in mind, Anthony and everyone else out there who has similar questions. All right, here, I was waiting for this question to come in, something like this, Brian, and we finally got it here from Bert. Usually comes in around this time of the year every year, usually at the tail end of epic years, and 2020 certainly falls into that category. Probably not for all the good reasons, but nonetheless, it falls into an epic volume year. Bert wants to know, hello, gents. Very, very fancy audience you have, Brian. Very formal. My question, do you think 2021 has a chance of coming close to the volume levels that we saw in 2020? Thanks for so much great content every week. Well, I've said this before on the network too. Kind of be careful what you wish for from the volume perspective. People asked this at the end of 2018, which was our last big record year. And look what we saw that year. We saw VIX-mageddon, Vol-mageddon. We saw the annihilation of a lot of the inverse volatility products. We saw a couple other big sell-offs that year as well in October heading into December. And it took a lot to really get those levels, and we blew them all away this year. But look what was required. We saw a massive global pandemic, a trade war, everyone being stuck at home, most of our economy being shut down for various portions of time. So a lot of horrible things were required to get these levels of volume. So maybe selfishly, just from a human perspective, I hope not. I like it. I'm in the options business. I want everyone to do well in the options world. I also want us to be able to go outside again and go to school and all the other things that we normally do. But that said, I will put this caveat out there that 2020 has changed the game in a lot of ways, not the least of which, the area that Brian's talking to on this show, that beginner, that basic retail audience has exploded by any metric. The one lots hitting the audience, the volume, you name it. So that number has increased exponentially. And they're not going anywhere, at least for the time being, So that's changed the game in interesting ways and makes me wonder if perhaps we could have more vol than you might otherwise anticipate if, let's say, the predictions come to pass and the vaccines work and the pandemic is tamped down in the early part of 2021. We might still see some sustained volume. Brian, what are your thoughts here for Bert, obviously coming off the heels of a just absurd year by every metric known to man? What do you think are our chances, as he says, 2021 has the chance of coming close to the volume levels that we saw this year, sir?
Well, I will say that we did set record volumes at Ally Invest in option trading. Ever since the March turn down, every single month has been another record-breaking month as far as volume in the options trading world. So, yeah, the path of least resistance would be to the downside here, obviously, and I think that would be a good thing overall for the world if we did slow down a little bit. But one of the things that I saw, and you're talking about volume as far as options are concerned, but we had volume in education. Oh, my gosh, did we ever kill it? And I'm sure Mark and everybody over at Options Insider realize this too. We just had great attendance on all of my events, and we did a couple of digital conferences because you couldn't go outside. You couldn't actually go to a conference hall. So we had great attendance at all of these events this year. So maybe you're right, Mark. Maybe people are learning. They had the time. They work from home. They got more time on their hands. They wanted to learn about options. And that was definitely the case if you look at our attendance numbers too, overall.
Yeah, our Education Wednesday shows, in particular this show, and the option block, we're blowing the doors off this year. So that also speaks to, the whole network as a whole, but certainly the education-oriented stuff really just turning it to 11, which makes me wonder if there is indeed this new crop of, call them one-lot traders, call them whatever you want out there, the retail folks out there who are now active and turned on. They have the accounts. They're funded. They're trading. And hopefully the downturn in Tesla doesn't wipe them all out because a lot of them are buying Tesla calls. But outside of that, they're learning about things like, VIX and everything else. And that puts us in good stead to maybe have some decent approximation of 2020's volume without the horrors that we're commensurate with. I've said it before, careful what you wish for from an options volume perspective. Options talk about VIX being inversely correlated. Options volume is sometimes inversely correlated to the health of the planet as a whole. So bear that in mind when you're asking for more options volume. But yeah, the bar has been raised. This rising tide has lifted all the boats. And I think even if we settle down a little bit next year, which, again, not the worst thing, then I still think these people are going to hang around, and they've learned, they've dipped their toes in, they've been excited, they've been intrigued, and I think they'll be slinging some more in 2021. So let's hope for a healthy volume year, but also a healthy year just for the planet as a whole, everyone. All right, let's keep on rolling here. It's fun to have you live, Brian, so we got to take advantage of it when we can. All right, this is an interesting one. Comes from Melman. Melman wants to know, what was your biggest options surprise during this crazy year? Well, I have an idea, Brian, but I'm going to let you go first because it is your show. What do you have to say for Melman? What was your biggest options-oriented surprise this year, sir?
Well, can I say two? I think my biggest one that just...
It's your show. You can say how many as you want.
The biggest thing that has blown my mind overall is that they put Tesla in the S&P 500 index, as we said at the beginning. I just really don't understand why you want to force people to buy Tesla. And I mean force by everybody's 401k is now going to be tracked by the S&P. That is tracked by the S&P 500 index is now going to own Tesla. So because of that, that was a big, I just never, ever anticipated that one happening. Now, that's just totally separate of the craziness that we saw in the option volume overall. But I think my biggest surprise is that since the March downturn, we haven't seen the VIX go below 20. So the volatility has just stayed true throughout. We said all-time highs in the marketplace, but that just shows that there's just so many people out there that are not 100% into this move and never saw that VIX. It touched 20, I think, twice. I've been keeping a close eye on it, but we've never broken. I think we did maybe for a second, but we've never finished below 20 since the March downturn overall.
Yeah, that's certainly a good one. There are many surprises I had in 2020, most of them not good, at least, but from an options perspective, they were all pretty good. So let's focus on that because that's what your question was, and that's more optimistic. So yeah, I definitely, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier about just the explosion of the one lot masses out there. You know, we've had discussions. I've been doing this for a while. I've been around the options block for a little bit. I've been talking to people who are educators. We do a lot of that here on this network. We talk to exchanges and brokers and OIC and everyone else who's out there on the front lines all the time doing the bleeding edge of options education. It always was assumed that there was kind of this base level of penetration you could get, but it would be hard to get beyond a certain percentage, let's say, of the investing public or the public at large, because options were always perceived as risky or too complicated or too obtuse, or pick any combination of those three out there. So there's always going to be this certain swath of the public that just weren't going to touch them for whatever reason. This year, we kind of blew all that away. Everyone, and literally your mom, is out there trading options right now, whether it's the advent of the lower commissions at firms like Ally and everywhere else, whether it's just everyone stuck at home and paying more attention to the markets, probably some combination thereof out there. But it's just been this tsunami, this retail tsunami out there. And personally, I think it's great. You know, there's always been this conversation, you know, everyone has to always disclaim options are risky and they're not suitable for all. And I say the hell with that. I think options are suitable for all. And if you can buy a stock, then you could certainly and should be trading options, whether it's just the basic use case of using options to get into and out of a stock position like the wheel, or to hedge a stock position with the put, or to sell a covered call against. So if you're trading stock, which is the vast majority of the folks out there, you should be trading options. It's just a no-brainer. You're missing out. You're not doing it right if you're not trading options. So to see so many people awakening to that fact, that doesn't mean they're all doing it right. A lot of them are just buying Tesla upside calls, and that has worked out for recent history. We'll see if the past is prologue on that. That could end up being an issue, but we're trying to educate them. That's what the show like this and everything else is for, right? To turn them away from just loading up on Tesla lottery tickets and explaining there's more to the options world than that. And we'll get there. It'll take a little bit of time, but we'll get there. And slowly it seems like these people are coming around. They're graduating to more advanced shows. They're doing more advanced trades on platform like Ally and everything else. So that's been certainly a surprise to me. I never thought we'd see that massive of explosion in a single calendar year. Look what it took. But we saw it, and it's been impressive. And certainly if you want a silver lining for the year that is 2020, it is from an options perspective. There's never been a year like this, just beating every metric you could possibly imagine. So from that very sliver of a microcosm of the year, from an options perspective, it certainly has been a good one. All right, Brian, since we're being positive, let's end our live palooza here with a little bit of love. This love comes from Angel64. He or she says, "Thank you, Brian Overby." Oh, again, such a formal audience you have. Thank you, Brian Overby, for writing this playbook and hosting this weekly show to help folks like me try to learn more about options trading. It's a difficult topic, and your assistance has made the process much easier. I truly believe that I am a better options trader today because of it. Thank you again. Well, there you go, Brian. A little bit of love from Angel. It sounds like a lot of the other listeners are chiming in with that. So we have to say for Angel and everyone else who has obviously enjoyed OPR and gotten a lot out of it in 2020, sir.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Angel. And I love the fact that that is your handle right now, this time of year. To get that feedback just makes it all worth it. So we're looking to do more and more OPR going into 2021. And I'm very excited to be able to do it. And especially when I get feedback like that. Thanks, Angel.
All right. That music means, unfortunately, we've come to the end of this very rare and managed to drag Brian kicking and screaming onto the live platform, listeners. Don't worry, we'll get him live more out there. I know you guys love it. You want more Brian in your lives, so we'll get him live more often. So you guys, if you listen to live, you got a sneak preview. This won't be coming out till next week on the networks. You got it early. Welcome. Happy Festivus to you. I see you out there, Mr. Flowmaster, and everyone else listening live. Glad to see you're enjoying a little bit of OPR. But Brian, if folks want more OPR, dare I say more Brian, dare I say more Ally in their lives after listening to this, where should they go? What should they do?
Well, you can always just send me an email directly. My email is theoptionsguy@invest.ally.com. Please check me out on Twitter. All the educational events that we do at Ally Invest, I tweet about on a daily/weekly basis. So please check me out there. And as always, we'll be back next year to talk options on Options Playbook Radio. Thanks for coming, everyone.
All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. For everybody listening live, it is Education Wednesday. You are going to get an options boot camp later today. It's already been recorded, so you're not going to get it live, but you will get it on the network very soon later today. So you're going to get your double dose. You're going to get an OPR from Brian today. You're going to get your boot camp, and then come up next week, everyone who couldn't join us live, which we know most of you like the on-demand, you'll get this episode in your hot little hands, as well as another options boot camp and all that other fun stuff. Of course, stay tuned throughout the rest of the week. We will have other fun stuff hitting you. No live shows, obviously, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, but we'll work out some fun stuff to hit your feed. Don't you worry. So we won't leave you hanging. And then we'll see you back here in the new year, as Brian said. It's crazy to say 2021. It sounds like the distant sci-fi future, but it is now. And we'll see you then for another episode of Options Playbook Radio.
The Options Playbook is brought to you by Ally Invest. Anything mentioned today is for educational purposes and is not a recommendation or advice. Options involve risk. Please refer to ally.com/invest/disclosures to review additional risks involved with trading options. Securities offered through Ally Invest Securities, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.